Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Recording in
wabarakatuh.
progress.
The Honorable Rector of Universitas Andalas, Professor Dr. Yuliandri SHMH, the Honorable Dean Faculty of Economics, Andalas University, Dr. Eva Yunedi, Honorable Vice Dean, Bapak Endrizal Ridwan, the second Vice Dean, Dr. Ferry Andrianus, the third Vice Dean is Dr. Ma'ruf. Honorable representative from our sponsor, Icbe Syariah and Bank Syariah Indonesia. Honorable keynote speakers, Bapak Hilmun Ishar from Islamic Development Bank, Professor Dr. Mehmet Sutai from Durham University, Professor Salina Kasim from Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, International Islamic University, Malaysia. Chairman of the 5th International Conference on Business and Economic, Icbe 2021, Muhammad Fani Al-Farisi. Distinguished lecturers, presenters, and participants of International Conference. Good afternoon and have a good time, dear ladies and gentlemen, from Universitas Andalas, West Sumatra, Indonesia. My name is Indah Permata Suryani as a host in this event. First of all, we would like to welcome all delegates and presenters in the opening ceremony of the 5th International Conference on Business and Economics 2021. Faculty of Economics Universitas Andalas, in collaboration with International Islamic University Malaysia, proudly present the 5th International Conference on Business Economics 2021 with the theme Islamic Economic System, Halal Industry, and Governance in Accelerating the Process of Economic Recovery amid the post-pandemic era. This event also been supported by Icbe Syariah and Bank Syariah Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, praise is always be given to Allah for the blessing and guidance, do that we all can be here to attend this virtual international conference. So ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving to the next agenda. Welcoming remark by Chairman of Icbe, Dr. Muhammad Fani Al-Farisi from Faculty of Economics, Universitas Andalas. Bapak Muhammad Fani, time is yours.
Okay, Indah, can you hear my voice?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Alhamdulillah. All praises are due to Allah, the creator of the universe, the most merciful and the all-knowing. As His creation, we are grateful for all of His bounties and guidance. Hopefully, Allah always protect us in this current pandemic condition. And furthermore, salawat and salam for our messenger, for the Prophet Muhammad SAW, the final messenger, and also for his family, companions, and ummah, his ummah until the end of time. He is the best role model who was sent to be a mercy to the whole creation. By following his path or sunnah, we wish to be granted the shafa'at and meet him directly in the Jannatul Firdaus. In the very good occasion, I would like to greet our honorable guest, Professor Yuliandri, the Rector of Universitas Andalas, and also the Dean of Faculty of Economics, Dr. Icbe Yunedi, the Vice Dean, Dr. Endrizal Ridwan, and also Vice Dean 1 and Vice Dean 3, Dr. Ma'ruf. Yeah. And also would like to greet our distinguished keynote speakers. First, my guru, Prof. Salina Kasim from IUM, Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, and Prof. Mehmet Asutai from Durham Center for Islamic Economics and Finance, Dr. Hilmun Ishar from Islamic Development Bank, Dr. Sultan Emir Hidayat from Komite Nasional Ekonomi and Keuangan Syariah, KNEKS. And I would like to also extend my greeting to the delegates of the Icbe Syariah and Bank Syariah Indonesia as the sponsor for this event. On behalf of the organizing committee, we welcome all invited speakers, presenters, and participants of the 5th International Conference on Business and Economics 2021. It is an honor to be involved in such an excellent platform with academics and researchers from many institutions in 5 different countries. Yeah. Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, Bahrain, Brunei Darussalam, and also United Kingdom. Hopefully, this event can be a medium for exchanging ideas and networking creation, particularly in the current COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has negatively impacted the global economy. It has contributed to the decline of economic and business activities, rising unemployment and inequality. According to the IDB Working Group on the COVID-19 crisis and Islamic finance, the current crisis seems to have more adverse impact on the real GDP than the 2008 global financial crisis. Yeah. However, once the pandemic is under control, inshallah, the economic recovery can be faster than the post-COVID period. So concerning the economic recovery in the post-pandemic period, the Islamic economy and finance system can be more relevant for 2 reasons. Number one, the integration of financial and real sector. Yeah, so this is one of the unique character of this Islamic economics and finance. And the Maqasid Sharia principle that promote justice, fairness, and protection to the environment and marginal groups of the society. In view of this notion, the Islamic economics and finance system can play a more substantial role in accelerating the economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. So the 5th ICBE 2021 is from joint efforts by several parties. So we really appreciate that, namely the conference committee, institutional partners, and sponsors. And with that, we would like to express our gratitude to the Faculty of Economics as the host, committee members, and also our appreciation to our partners and co-organizer, NAKS, AIUM, Islamic Banking Finance Institute, Ikatan Ahli Ekonomi Islam, Institut Agama Islam Negeri Kudus, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis Islam, UIN Imam Bonjol, and Tazkiyah Islamic University College. And furthermore, we are also thankful for the support of the industry, notably Asuransi Askrida Syariah and Bank Syariah Indonesia, and we hope that this is not the last, and I hope this will be we can have more collaboration with the industry, hopefully. And finally, we do apologize to all participants and also presenter for any shortcomings and limitation in organizing the conference. We also seek all of forgiveness for any wrongdoings. May Allah Azza wa Jalla guide and protect us in all our endeavors. Thank you all, and God bless. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bapak Muhammad Fani. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is welcoming speech by Dean of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Andalas, Bapak Eva Yunedi, PhD. We would like to invite Bapak Eva Yunedi to deliver a speech. Bapak, so sorry, we can't. Okay. For the cost, can you please unmute for?
All right. It's okay now. Thank you. Thank you, Indah. Hi, everyone. I hope you are doing okay today. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Honorable Rector of Universitas Andalas, Professor Yuliandri. Thank you, Pak Yuliandri, for coming and giving a speech in this conference. The Honorable keynote speakers, Professor Mehmet Asutai from Durham University, Professor Salina Kasim from IIUM, Dr. Hilmun Izar of IDB, Dr. Sultan Emir Hidayat of KNEKS, next year, and Dr. Fani Al-Farisi of University of Andalas. Distinguished presenters, participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. All praise are due to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for the successful organization of the International Conference on Business and Economics, Icbe 2021. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly affected all aspects of human life, including economic aspect globally. So in general, the pandemic has caused quite deep economic contraction. The pandemic has badly hit economic in relation to purchasing power, businesses, and economic growth in particular. So the pandemic indeed also affected the Sharia economy and finance industry. So however, Sharia economy and finance still show a better resilience in facing this crisis compared to the conventional one. And at the same time, the role of some Sharia economy and finance instruments increased during the pandemic. And this pandemic, therefore, apparently has driven Sharia economy and finance to be better, especially in terms of creativity and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, as the largest majority Muslim country in the world, Indonesia has shown a significant implementation of Sharia economy and the finance sector. Some achievements have been made during the challenging periods. In the global Islamic economy indicator, for instance, Indonesia has moved its position from the 10th rank in 2018 to the 4th rank in 2021. These achievements allows Indonesia to optimizing the potential of the biggest producer of halal products and services in the world. They have included foods and drinks, pharmaceutical and cosmetics, fashion and tourism, media and entertainment, and Sharia finance sectors. Then it was followed by the achievement of ICD, Definitive Islamic Finance Development Indicator, which placed Indonesia in the 2nd rank for the category of the most developed countries in the Islamic finance. So this provided evidence that Sharia economy and finance is an adaptive and innovative system that is capable of offering solutions for the economic recovery during 2021. So given the global impact of the pandemic COVID-19, including the Sharia economy and finance sector, several sectors have taken lead in establishing the robust of Sharia economy and finance. For example, we in Indonesia issuing Sharia economy and finance architecture master plan. We developed the infrastructure for the development of Sharia economy and finance ecosystem. We issue green sukuk instrument, and we create the digitalization of SMEs and zakah, infak, and wakaf. So all this progress have shown the positive results. The most recent studies show that the COVID-19 pandemic has badly hit every sector. The way we live, the way we communicate, the way we conduct the meeting and conference, the way we deliver teaching as well. And also halal travel sector is one among them. On the other hand, the pandemic also has triggered people awareness to be more positive behavioral habits, such as eating a healthy food. So Islamic social finance also gains its significance after the pandemic COVID-19. Number of regulations has been issued in Indonesia in order to improve and to strengthen the governance of Sharia economy and finance sector. So this all inspire us, the Faculty of Economics of Universitas Andalas, to take the initiative to organize the ICB 2021 with the theme of Islamic economic system, halal industry, governance in accelerating the process of economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. We are very happy to note that this conference has come a long way since 2010, as I remember, where I was the first chairman of this ICB. And at the ICB 2021, we are delighted to see a large gathering of minds in deliberating on various issues arising from Sharia economy and banking industry in general. So several programs have been arranged to ensure that conference will be achieve its intended objectives. The keynote speakers have been invited from international key figures, international experts. Several panel sessions have been organized and about 90 papers are presented in this ICB 2021. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this conference, introduce you to the all keynote speakers and delegates that have come from all over the country to share their knowledge and to enhance our understanding to the Islamic economic issues. Today's ICBE conference has reaching almost 300 participants participating from all over the world, including Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei Darussalam, Bangladesh, Taiwan, Bahrain, and then the United Kingdom. And this is making this conference a truly international conference in spirit. And in addition to that, papers presented will be potentially published in the top Sharia economy finance journal and publishers. We would like to express our sincere appreciation to all ICBE organizing committee. Thank you, Dr. Fani Al-Farisi. Thank you all. You have been very, very fantastic. You have been doing a very amazing job. And thank you for the students who also helped us to organize this conference. Although it is conducted in a virtual way. Hopefully in the future, we can gather in physical. We can welcome you at the University of Andalas in Padang. We would like also to take this opportunity to thank co-organizing institutions, University College Bahrain, UCB, Institut Agama Islam Negeri Kudus, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Komite Ekonomi dan Keuangan Syariah, KNEX, IIUM, Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance. Thank you, Prof. Salina, for joining us. And thank you for coming and for sharing your ideas in this conference. And also Fakultas Ekonomi and Business, Universitas Islam Negeri Imam Bonjol, Ikatan Ahli Ekonomi Islam Indonesia, and also Tazkiyah Islamic University College. I'm also grateful for the generous support from Asuransi Askrida Syariah. Thank you for your support. And also Bank Syariah Indonesia, the largest Islamic bank in Indonesia. Thank you for your support. And many parties and participants in this conference. We hope that this event would be a stepping stone for more fruitful collaboration among higher education institutions, industry, and then the stakeholders in the future. May Allah bless and guide us in all our endeavors. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Eva. Ladies and gentlemen, now we move to the next agenda is opening speech by Rector of Universitas Andalas, Professor Dr. Yuliandri SIMH. We would like to invite Professor Yuliandri to deliver a speech.
Thank you, Mrs. Hinda Permatasuri. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ya rasulullah jama'in. Allahumma sholli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Ladies and gentlemen, in all the earth, praise to Allah for His assistance and for forgiveness. We seek refuge in Him for our sins and guidance, for He is the only true God and Savior, and Muhammad is His messenger. On behalf of Andalas University, I would like to thank the Faculty of Economic UNAN for organizing the 5th International Conference on Business and Economics, Icbe 2021. Given the conference themes, I believe it is an important academic event for the academic community in general and Andalas University in particular. And it is in line with our aspiration to become a reputable regional higher education institution. I welcome all participants, speakers, and presenters of the 5 Icbe. Your contribution to the event is remarkable. From the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, many lessons can be learned. Despite the barriers we are experiencing, many academics and researchers worldwide still manage to collaborate in sharing ideas and thought. Additionally, whether we like it or not, the current COVID-19 pandemic has pushed us to learn information and communication technology, ICT, to facilitate virtual meeting of many people from different locations. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the conference co-organizer, namely University College Bahrain, Institut Agama Islam Negeri Kudus, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Komite Ekonomi dan Keuangan Syariah, International Islamic University Malaysia, Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, Fakultas Ekonomi and Business Islam, Universitas Islam Negeri Imam Bonjol, Ikatan Ahli Ekonomi Islam, Komisariat UNAN, and Tazkiyah Islamic University College. I am also grateful for the generous support from the Islamic financial services industry for the 5th Icbe. We hope that these events would be a stepping stone for more fruitful collaboration between higher educational institutions, industry, and other stakeholders in future. Finally, I hope the conference can be a platform for academic discussion and exchanging ideas and thought, inshallah. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Bapak Yuliandri. And ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving to the next agenda is launching of International Conference on Business and Economics, ICBE 2021. And we would like to invite Prof. Yuliandri as the Rector, Andalas University, and also Pak Eva as the Dean to watch this event together.
Thank you.
Sorry, wait for a moment before we deliver to the moderator. So we're going to have a video launching of ICBE.
Five, four, three, two, 1, 0.
Right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving to the main course of this international conference. In this session will be conducted by moderator. So our moderator is Dr. Sari Lenggogeni. Ibu Sari Lenggogeni has been graduate from Andalas University in Bachelor of Economics and followed a Master in Management in University of Indonesia, and then has been completed postgraduate diploma in Maastricht School Management, Netherlands, and also got the doctoral degree from University of Queensland, Brisbane, Australia. Her research interests also related to the tourism crisis and halal tourism and tourism planning and policy. And Ibu Sari Lenggogeni also waiting for publication about halal tourism entry. So related to the Encyclopedia of Tourism edited by Jafar Jafri. And another experience also in international, there's a leader for expert team, halal tourism regulations, and also advisor for the Ministry of Tourism and Economic Creative. Now we have Ibu Sari Lenggogeni. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Indah. How are you?
Good, thank you, Udi.
Thank you
So,
very much.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, time is yours, Oni.
Okay, thank you very much, Indah. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorable rectors, honorable dean, honorable chairmen, distinguished speakers, distinguished participants, and distinguished presenters. Welcome to the 5th International Conference on Business and Economics that brings the titles of Islamic Economic System, Halal Industry, Governance in Accelerating the Process of Economic Recovery amid the post-pandemic era. As we know that COVID-19 has bring the unprecedented impact on the global industry and economics, and it also contribute to the declines of economic and business activities, rising unemployment and equality. To facilitate the exchange ideas and how to overcome the problems in the post-pandemic recovery, we have the 3 distinguished speakers from various countries, and I think the distinguished speakers has experts and skills on their fields. I would like to introduce 3 distinguished speakers. We have Honorable Doctors Halimun Ishar from Islamic Development Bank that will bring the discussion of will the global pandemic reshape Islamic economics and finance? And the second distinguished speaker will be delivered by Professor Dr. Mehmet Ashutai from Durham University with the titles of discussion, The Islamic Moral Economic Imperative for Just and Sustainable Futures. And the third speaker will be delivered by Professor Dr. Salina Kasim from IIUM Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, International Islamic University in Malaysia. Before we come to the main course, I would like to read about the biography of Dr. Hilmun Ishar, a senior economist, Islamic Development Bank Group. Dr. Hilmun Ishar is an internationally renowned Islamic economics and finance expert, a strategist and development economist with 15 years of experience, expert collaborations, and stakeholders engagements in the USA, Europe, and the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Dr. Hilmun Ishar graduated from Loughborough University for his master in Islamic finance and awarded the PhD in Islamic economics and finance from the Durham University. Dr. Hilmun Ishar also has work experience as economist, senior economist, Islamic Development Bank Group, and also lecturers in economics and finance, the Markfield Institute of Higher Education. He is also research fellows in Islamic finance, Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. So I think he will bring us a very insightful issue about how to address the post-pandemic era with the title of Will the Global Pandemic Reshape Islamic Economics and Finance? Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Hilman Ishar on the stage. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin walhamdulillah. Allahumma shalli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I would like to extend my utmost appreciation and gratitude for the very kind and invitation, and obviously, in particular and personally, Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Andalas. I just like to open the Pandora box now. There is a secret. Dr. Icbe used to be my big brother, and he is still my big brother, and he was actually and is still a source of inspirations to me today. And in fact, I was so much driven and inspired by him. So my dedication and commitment to pursuing my master and PhD degree in the United Kingdom was one way or the other, and a great deal it was inspired by Dr. Icbe, and obviously I will and I shall ever be grateful. Jazakallah khairan. And this has been such an honor, and this is indeed a strategic platform. I think I should congratulate Universitas Andalas for bringing and assembling great minds. And, invariably, this has been the 5th international conference on business economics, despite the, as you all know, that great difficulties that everybody across the globe has been encountering. Obviously, with respect to the ongoing global pandemic, and we do not know when the whole global pandemic is going to come to an end. So, but without further ado, let me start with some of the thoughts on the global pandemic in relation to my keynote speech or my humble presentation. But before going any further, because I just would like to inform you another piece of information. Today is also the first day of Islamic Development Bank annual meeting, that is now currently taking place in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. So I think please forgive me because I will not be able to join you, with throughout the entire sessions of the conference. Obviously, as part of still the Islamic development and commitments and agenda, there are a few meetings and pre-scheduled appointments that coincide with ISDB annual meeting that is now concurrent with your respective obviously event. Okay, let's start with some of the thoughts that shed some light on. And as you all know, it's not over until it's over. We initially thought that this was going to just stop by, the global pandemic. We would never in a million years think that to Hajj season, to Eid al-Fitr, to Ramadan, we are still in the very peak of the global pandemic. And notwithstanding, the emerging Delta variant, and I hope, and we also, very much are hopeful that there wouldn't be any more variant, because the prolonged pandemic has made everybody tired across the globe. And I can reassure you, I'm sure many of our country fellows in Indonesia, they are, rather tired and exhausted with, I think you call it PPKM, but I can tell you, I can reassure you that there are so many different variations of PPKM across the globe. At least this is something that we observe in our ISDB member countries, spread across 4 continents in 57 member countries as well. But by the way, the presentation is not clear to me, so I cannot read out the presentation that is now on the screen. No, I cannot see clearly.
Probably put it on a full screen, Pak Hilman, because it's been full for Zoom. Yeah,
it's actually rather blurred, but anyhow, I'm trying my best to read it out.
all right.
If you can go back to the previous slide. Please. Hello? Can you please go back to the previous slide? Yeah, this is better.
Yeah, Pak Hilman, I'm so sorry, but Baston is not, your voice is not clear enough. How about, what do you think, Niriri?
I think Pak Hilman,
it's a bit far.
It's not clear. Probably you might have to get it close to the.
Right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Right. Can you navigate around the screen, because it was clearer before, but now it's getting blurred.
Okay, so the next one, please.
Are you doing something
In
on the
progress,
screen?
yeah, in progress, yeah.
Right.
Is it okay, Pak?
Well, still blurred, but anyhow, I'm trying my best to read out. If you can go back to the previous slide.
Okay, the previous slide, please. Sebelum. Yeah.
No. This is next. The one before. No.
All right, Pak.
I think you keep going forward. Please go backwards.
Yeah.
Now this is better.
No, it's previous one sebelumnya. So is it the one?
Okay. No.
Okay.
Okay, this is good, but obviously it's getting blur again. But anyhow, this is good now.
Right.
No. Please stay to the previous slide. Yeah, this is good. Yeah. Okay. Many countries. I think first of all, I will not be specifically discussing particularly on the Indonesian context, given the eminent and vast importance of trying to understand the global perspective, the global pandemic impacts on a number of different countries, in particular in IC countries, as well as the ISDP member countries. So I would rather, try my best to shed some lights on some of the impacts of pandemics on, some of the countries from a rather global perspective. And one of the crucial initiatives that can really become the game changer is none other than vaccination. And why this has become very crucial, because the vaccination rollout has proven to be fundamental in making the determination in terms of different level of progress in different countries. Because without having the effective vaccination rollout, then obviously you will always be encountering with the choice between the restrictions and the loosening up the economy. And Indonesia obviously is without an exception. This has, encounter and challenge so many different countries. And incidentally, in the country that I am now currently domiciled, namely Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and perhaps one way or the other, because of the political setup, the governance setup, the type of country, it may somehow create a different level of efficiency of the vaccination rollout. And I am personally even stunned and rather impressed by the obedience, so to speak, from the public in terms of not challenging the policy of getting the vaccine, irrespective of the vaccination vaccine. And but if we look at the other countries, even until today, a great deal of apprehension is still embraced by so many different communities, whether I should be getting AstraZeneca, whether I should be getting Pfizer or Moderna, and so on and so forth. Not to mention another level of sensitivity in terms of not only in terms of being healthy or the long-term effect of vaccination, but in some communities in different member countries, the other issue, and I have to mention Indonesia as well in this case, is the kind of sensitivity that is attached to the religious values. And you may be surprised that if you compare with other Muslim countries, perhaps one way or the other, our religious sensitivity when it comes to the different types of vaccine is rather, I don't want to say exaggerated, but rather oversensitive. But obviously we respect that. Despite the fact that, Dewan Syariah Nasional or Majelis Ulama, but anyhow, we don't want to delve much deeper into these areas because there are people who are obviously more qualified and well-versed when it comes to certain matters from the Sharia perspective. But the other important element that I would like to share with you from this slide is that please do not expect the recovery of economy to be fully back into the normal, whether you would like to call it new normal or the normal 2.0 and so on and so forth. I think it all is down to the level of the effectiveness in terms of vaccination, and this is without any exception across the board in many different member countries, OIC as well as the ISD. So I suspect, yes, we come to know that so many different countries have started going back to normal in terms of going back to work and so on and so forth. However, this still all is contingent upon the level of achieving what they call the community. That obviously we all know that different countries have different approaches to such things. Next slide. COVID-19, this can also be considered as the political turning. We still remember fresh in our mind the entanglement of tension between the United States of America and China, big giants, not to mention the Russia. And on this slide, I'm not seeing the slides, but I'm trying my best to explain. This has become the vehicle for the big giants in the globe as their kind of vaccine diplomacy that can really spread across the globe. Over here, we can see the Russia as China, and obviously not to mention the dominance of, to a certain degree, obviously, the United States. And China, and I mean, throughout their vaccine diplomacy, they are trying to restore or even strengthening the global standing and pivoting towards developing national PR, while pandemic confronts power shift to Asia. And you might be surprised that with the lingering adverse impact of the Brexit that is now today even still remains unresolved. It has created a great deal of among the European countries, not to mention the United Kingdoms, and during which and obviously the whole adverse cause and impact has been exacerbated by the growing tension between United States of America and China, and now we are encountering with the recent so-called another type of pandemic, namely the Afghanistan being taken over by Taliban. And this has created another type of crisis in terms of refugee camps and refugee crisis and so on and so forth. And some of you might be wondering why those things can be very important. It is very important. Why? Because you can see the escaped refugees coming all over the places in Europe, in America, and not to mention Turkey has become the cushions or the anchors of so many refugee camps. And so many of you perhaps who have been or who have privilege to visit Turkey, for instance, over the past few years, you may see a very obvious deterioration in terms of quality of life. And some of the things are primarily due to the huge influx of the Syrian refugee that have created a kind of discontent among the communities because of their open policy when it comes to the immigrants. Yes, of course, Syrians are Muslims, but then obviously when it comes to the analysis from the economic point of view, we can see different sectors, formal as well as the informal sectors. Certain employment market has been displaced by the rather unqualified migrants coming from all over the place, particularly from countries that have been suffering from the civil war, not to mention the ongoing war in Afghanistan and in Syria as well, that remains, kind of unresolved. Next, please. So what's the impact on global growth? Next. It is too obvious to ignore that the huge impact on travel, trade, and employment despite massive policy support. Later, we will be subsequently discussing what kind of policy supports that we can offer from the Islamic economic point of view. But I think this is too obvious for us. Perhaps if we look at it from the domestic perspective, you may see one way or the other a rather unshocking or impact of the recovery. But then if you see the international or global perspective, in fact, the aviation industry, the hospitality, tourism and travel have been hit the hardest impact, and it has been proven empirically by so many different data sources. You can name Financial Times, Economist, and Guardian, and so many other data sources. Next. And this slide is just, exhibiting the kind of the spike up in terms of the, due to the COVID-19. Obviously, when it comes to the investment, economic, finance, it's all with expectation. Certainty is obviously one of the core components that can be part and parcel of the decision-making process. And due to the COVID-19, we all know that nothing is for sure, and we can't really plan accordingly. But again, going back to the issue of vaccination, it has been with help in terms of the decision-making process. At least if we take the example of us from the Islamic Bank, we can see now, the kind of projection that we can do and accomplish as well as to deliver in the first quarter of 2022. Because 2021 is already coming to an end, 2020 is just around the corner, and 2020, well, I cannot say much. We all experienced the same. We are on the same boat. 2020 just went by, and if we did something, then we were grateful. If we couldn't do anything, we are still grateful. But anyhow, we are still moving forward, and hopefully with the help of so many different, financial aids, vaccination, and so on and so forth, we can see a clearer, rather projection in the first quarter of 2022. Next, please. Rebound, but full recovery proves elusive. This is quite interesting. Inevitably, it has been an ongoing discussion that the East, the Far East, or the Asia, has been considered as the sleeping giant. Now it is our time to really reaffirm our standpoint, whether we are the giant, or we are the sleeping giant, or we are truly sleeping throughout all years. So this is now the moment for us to really prove to the world, particularly from the perspective of being Indonesian, in relations to you all know the Visi Indonesia Maju 2045 post global pandemic. What are we going to do? But the current data shows us that at least from the global growth rate average, we can see that rather promising and encouraging growth in most of the regions or jurisdictions in Asia is rather promising as compared to the different part of the world, not to mention Africa, Eastern European, and US. Next, please. The road to recovery will be very long for G20 countries, and over the last 2 years, I've been in many different occasions have been emphasizing the great prominent importance of us, Indonesia, being a G20 member country. And we cannot take this thing lightly, because Jeffrey Sachs, one of the prominent professor from the university, other prominent economists and scholars, the way they say Indonesia, yes, Indonesia is a big country. Indonesia belongs to the G20 countries, and even our neighboring countries do not belong to the G20. But in many cases, when it comes to three things, defense, development, and diplomacy, we have the propensity or tendency to punch below our weight. Or perhaps the apologetic, rather excuse for us being the Indonesian is that, oh yeah, our country is so big. We have a lot of works to resolve. So I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But from the perspective of somebody being outside Indonesia at the moment, and I confirm with so many of my friends and colleagues from across the world, they don't see much Indonesia being very firm, very affirmative, very assertive when it comes to three things in the global context. From 3Ds, I'd like to call it the defense, diplomacy, and development. And we always claim we are the biggest Muslim population, but rather I think our outward-looking perspective has to be bolstered and enhanced. But I'm not sure if this is down to our nature of DNA or our nature of characteristic, being humble, being intriguing. We have the tendency of having difficulty to say no, so we like to avoid any confrontation, and so on and so forth. But anyhow, again, I can go on and on talking about this thing, but obviously this is a subject our discussion today. Next, please. Risks threaten the short-term bounce back. The potential for longer-lasting impact, although mitigating policies and factors in play, and I can't really see properly the slides, but I think some of the things that these slides would like to convey is that still similar to the previous slides, that there is a long way to go after the pandemic. Not to mention the internal issues that are still taking place in our country. Next, please. Large variation in recovery across sectors. Again, we can't really say 2022 being very clear off. At least I think the most promising, if not being very optimistic, I think by Q1 2023 we can be quite hopeful that we can sort of go back to perhaps a normal life. But even then, notion of normal life should really be redefined. What we really mean by normal life. Is it the same as the pre-pandemic, or is it entirely new things? We shall see going forward. Next, please. So the key takeaways from the first part of my speech was the pandemic has legs and some lasting effects. Geopolitical tension, global value chain restructuring are some of the components that should really be taken into account and looked into, and those things cannot be taken lightly, because the way we see this, the second one is that how are we positioning ourselves in the value chain, the geopolitical tension from the perspective of global. And Indonesia being again the biggest Muslim populations, as well as the prominent and prestigious G20 members, we really have to define ourselves. Where are we exactly in the entire discourse of the geopolitics as well as the global value chain? The decision is up to us whether we would like to sit as a passenger, or we would like to be on the driving seat. So it's up to us. If we are happy to be, some of my friends like to call it, if we are happy to be makmum, tafadhal. But then if you want to become the imam, well, obviously we have all the tools, I believe so, to become the imam. The next point is that the greater focus on resilience and regional solutions. Some of the things that can be also taken into account is that China, in many cases, are ahead of the curve, but US steaming ahead, and significant risk factors pose threat to recovery. Next, please. I think next will be about the Islamic economic and finance. Tapping into the finance. Next. Just to give you a glimpse of the ISD OIC. I think it is fair now for me to just explain a bit on what are we and who are we as the Islamic Development Bank. Well, essentially, Islamic Development Bank is one of the MDBs. They like to call it as the MDBs. MDB is the Multilateral Development Bank, and Indonesia is one of the shareholder. If I'm not mistaken, Indonesia is the 10th biggest shareholder, and you will not be surprised to know the first biggest shareholder is inevitably the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and surprisingly, the second biggest shareholder is Libya, right? And you try to compare Libya and Indonesia. Hang on a second, how can we compare ourselves with Libya? The fact remains the same. Libya is the second biggest shareholder in the ISDB. And obviously, ISDB was one way or the other founded by a group of foreign ministries and dignitaries from the OIC. So, and we have the same member countries, spread across 57 countries in 4 different countries. Next, please. So the key components of Islamic financial services industry, as you all know, we have Islamic banking, we have Islamic markets, we have takaful, and non-bank financial institutions. And one of the rather prominent sectors that has gained its fascination in terms of the excitement given the pandemic, as was rightly pointed out and alluded by Dean Bayonedi, is the potential sort of role of Islamic social finance. And now, although the study has started in 2014, and I think I can take sort of a pride that it was our institution, as a matter of fact, who coined the term Islamic social finance in 2013, 2014, with the first publication on Islamic social finance, taking the analysis of Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei, Bangladesh, Pakistan. So we took it was the first study on Islamic social finance, and the first kind of popularization the terminology of Islamic social finance, comprising of zakat, awqaf, and not-for-profit microfinance institutions. Next, please. If we recall the basic and fundamental Islamic finance value propositions, as a matter of fact, Islamic finance offers two lines of defense against crisis. As you can see in the diagram here, one of the real core values of Islamic finance or Islamic economic is the real interconnection between financial sector and economy or real sector, and the tight integration of finance with real economic activities and risk sharing is obviously considered as the first line of defense against endogenous risk, whereas the second one is the strong social safety net, and we can now unleash the potential of the social finance in so many different ways that can be considered as the line of defense against the exogenous risk. And again, the footnote of social finance is that we keep talking about the potential of zakat accumulation, wakaf accumulation, collection and distribution, and so on and so forth. But as a matter of fact, how many of us, and I always ask this question when I do my engagement with our clients, Muslim brothers and sisters in so many different occasions, different regions. How many of us are aware of our obligation to zakat mal? Obviously, you don't need to answer this question. And we keep talking about the potential of zakat. When we mention about zakat, we are not talking only about zakatul fitr, right? We also talk about essentially about zakatul mal. And we are aware that this can be a very sensitive issue because when it comes to the zakat resource mobilization, many different jurisdictions have different views on these things, and there is a quite peculiar, interesting view in some of the jurisdictions that we came across. Of course, because this is a public occasion, public function, I cannot mention the name of the country. What was really stunning was that in some of our Muslim communities in our member countries, they are having this kind of interesting conviction that if they pay sadaqah, that will substitute their obligation of zakat payment, which is obviously not the case, right? So this is something that we came across recently, and we were rather stunned with that. And but again, going back to what was alluded by the Dean, Dr. F. Ayonidi earlier, in light of the spirit of unleashing the potential of social finance, in particular awqaf, currently we at the Islamic Development Bank, you may be surprised to know that even now United Nations is taking huge interest in being part of the Islamic social finance activity. In fact, at the moment, we are now teaming up with the United Nations, WHO, the World Health Organization, and obviously us at the Islamic Development Bank. We try to structure a product and platform to mobilize the zakat fund across borders, across jurisdictions, and the whole one of the main objectives is to attract the donors from obviously the muzaki. We cannot say donor obviously because muzaki is different from donors, from the rich countries, so to speak. And the money of the zakat collection will be primarily targeted towards the vaccine purchase. And in this initiative,
I'm sorry to allow you to remind you, you have about 2 minutes left.
Oh, 2 minutes, right? Okay, I'm too excited, so I still. Right, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And in this initiative, we are we have obtained the fatwa from Islamic Fiqh Academy. And we asked 2 pertinent questions to the OIC International Fiqh Academy. Number 1 is that, can we utilize the zakat money to pay, to purchase vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine? And the answer is yes, alhamdulillah, we agree, okay? And the second one, and I know this is very sensitive issue and not many scholars are in agreement on this thing. And the second question that we posed to the International Islamic Fiqh Academy was whether non-Muslims can receive zakat fund, okay? And the answer was yes, provided that there are certain conditions to be met, right? But obviously the level of priority should be Muslims and poor. But then, you know, in zakat classical school of thought, there is a principle of prioritizations as well. But it opens the door for us to be very open-minded, and hopefully this product will be quite successful, inshallah. Right, still, since I have 2 minutes, let's move forward quite quickly. Next, please. I think we can leave it out. Next, please. Next. Again, next, please. Next, please. This can be a bit too complicated. Next, please. Next. Yeah, this one. Stop here. Yeah, this one. This is quite interesting. I took this photo myself. So this is not a screenshot from anybody forwarding the message to me. No, I took it myself. So when I happened to be in Istanbul, I went to the market. And, you know, as Indonesian, we like instant noodles. So I couldn't find Indomie or Supermi. So I found another brand. So when I checked the pack, and it gives me this kind of depiction. It is halal, you know, as Muslims, and I think for those who study abroad in the West in particular, first of all, you want to make sure that you eat halal food, right? And second of all, if you happen to be engaging in a financial transaction, obviously, perhaps some would prefer engaging with the riba-free transaction. So halalness is paramount to all. So when I check this thing, well, this is already halal. But then why is it important to demonstrate the Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali? It actually, as a matter of fact, explains everything that is happening in Islamic finance. If you recall the role of, in particular, AOIF, accounting and auditing organization of Islamic financial institutions, one of the crucial standards is the Sharia standards. This is one of the important roles of AOIF, is to create a standardization as well as convergence in terms of financial transactions. Because even until today, there are so many different variations of transactions that can be implemented and marketed in certain jurisdictions, but it is rather frowned upon in different jurisdictions. And as a result of that, you cannot market this product in those countries. They wouldn't tell you that this is haram or this is not halal. The scholars would tell you this is rather makruh or frowned. So this is again due to the Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali. Just to give you a little of examples, the very rigid conservative Turkish, they wouldn't eat prawn, they wouldn't eat seafood, They wouldn't tell you that this is haram or even makruh. But it's just not. They are simply not used to. Again, if you go to different jurisdiction and other issues, last example that I would like to share with you, Suriname. Okay, Suriname is also our member country, and if you recall the history, there are so many Javanese being transported by Dutch to Suriname to work in the garden. Okay, in 1800, and when we were sought by the Surinamese government to establish, because they also are interested in developing Islamic finance industry, okay? And they don't know where to start. And this is very typical, where to start and how to start when you want to develop Islamic finance. Do you want to start from the regulatory, supervisory, or legislation, or constitution? Do you have to change that? Or do you start from the bottom? Okay, you may want to say bottom up versus top down. Okay, but in Suriname, there is, apart from the diversity in terms of point of view, where to start, top down, bottom up, there is also another level of sensitivities, because they have Chinese, they have Caribbean, they have Muslims, they have Javanese, and the Javanese, interesting enough, so that it can relate to us, the Javanese communities over there, being Muslims, those who still follow the Qibla towards the west and the Qibla towards the east, if you know what I mean. Because our Qibla in Indonesia, okay, is toward the west. Am I right? But then when you are already in Suriname, the Qibla direction is no longer to the west. The Qibla direction is obviously to the northeast. Okay, so those Javanese people in Suriname, there is a certain madhab, they still face towards the west. So I asked them, why are you still facing toward the west? Well, at the end of the day, the earth is still circle. So if I even face toward the west, in the end, it will reach Mecca. So what can you say about that? Okay, so this is another example that another sensitivity, not only talking about legislation, constitution, the regulatory supervisory framework, but how people embrace the religious values. So from so many perspectives should be taken into account as well. Next, please. I think I'm running over the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's over.
let's go to the conclusion now.
Okay,
So, my apologies.
it's okay.
Go on, go on. The very last conclusion. Next, please. Again. 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 Next, please. Again. Yeah, this one. So will the global pandemic reshape Islamic economics and finance? As you all know, the social norms and values may evolve, and it is too obvious now. Methods of doing business may change. We are now in the era of digital revolutions, or 4.0. So the use of Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and with so many different smart contracts along the line, can become part and parcel of the new models of financial transactions. Digital banking may not necessarily see the real physical unit of a bank, so to speak, going forward. And obviously, the massive digitalization and digitalization remain unstoppable. This is something that we cannot stop. And now, even if you recall, one of the prominent standard-setting bodies in global banking system, namely BIS, based in Switzerland, they are now, in fact, they have started discussing central bank digital currency. And in September, we also invite Central Bank of Asia to talk about their point of view. We all know that they haven't really implemented this yet. When it comes to central bank digital currency, this is also part of the ongoing discussion that comes with the subsequent bullet point on the screen. The new assets classification may likely change. this can be quite delicate when it comes to new assets classification because as you all know, for those who learned the technicalities of Islamic financial transactions, the notion of conceptions of milkiyah, ownership, that comes with the you cannot sell what you do not have, you cannot sell what you own, and the transaction should take place in sequential orders. Then with the digitalization and digitization that are really unstoppable, now there is a question of whether the sequential transactional order are still relevant. And now one of the things that have become part and parcel of the ongoing discussions as well is also about the cryptocurrency. Can we really define, obviously one of the typical questions is, can we invest in cryptocurrency? But then one of the fundamental question that we should really address first of all is to really firmly decide and determine whether if you invest in something, whether those things are assets, can be classified as assets, are those things financial securities or money, currency? So there are so many different perspectives that really determine the permissibility of investment in the Sharia. And I can sort of foresee that so many different assets, in Islamic finance perspective, they call it whether those things can really change the nature of assets down the line going forward. If they change, then obviously that will inevitably change the landscape of Islamic financial transactions. And the last is we have been witnessing orientation towards social objectives and financial implications to be enforced. Like recently, one of the prominent initiatives from the Ministry of Finance is the Green Economy. But again, green economy, essentially, you are talking about the utilizations of fields. Again, there is also another lengthy discussion and debate if we see how the entire things are being structured, the emphasizing on the utilization of the later phase of the yields of the securitization. Well, I think that's all that I can share with you, and my objective for running over time. But last but not least, I know this is not necessarily relevant, but I think we should really bear in mind that in 2022 we will get the honor to become the presidency of G20, and I think we should really gear up for that. We would like to showcase our achievement with respect to the Islamic economics and finance. Because again, one of the remarks that has been reiterated time and time again is our ambition to become the global hub of the Islamic economy or funds or halal ecosystem, whatever you like to call it, in 2024. But my sort of challenge to that is that do we really mean what we say? Do we really, or have we really done really achieve that kind of ambition? But again, as prominent speakers, many patient like to say, just stay positive and stay encouraged, and hopefully we can really realize the potential of Visi Indonesia Maju 2045, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Give it a big applause for the Dr. Hilman Ishar for giving a very insightful discussions. I think there are actually 3 questions for Dr. Hilman, but I'm thinking about that because times is already over, and Professor Dr. Mehmet already joined this discussion. Probably we may answer the questions from the chat box if Dr. Hilman willing to answer the question from the chat box. I do apologize for this issue. So thank you very much again, Dr. Hilman Ishar, and next, for the second keynote speakers delivered by Professor Dr. Mehmet Asutai from Durham University, that will discuss about the Islamic moral economics imperative for just and sustainable futures. I would like to invite Professor Dr. Mehmet Asutai from Durham University to join with us. Okay, before Professor Durham would like to share his idea, I would like to read a brief description about Professor Mehmet Ashutai biography. Mehmet Ashutai is a professor, Middle Eastern and Islamic political, economic, and finance at the Durham University Business School. He is the director of Durham Center in Islamic Economic and Finance and the director of in Islamic Finance Program. Mehmet research and journal and book publication, teaching and supervisions of research is all in the Islamic moral economic and Islamic economic, Islamic political economic, Islamic finance and banking, Islamic governance and management, and the Middle Eastern political economies. His recently published books are Asutai Jan, a model of Islamic development, mapping the risk and risk management practice in Islamic banking, and his most recent academic articles is Political Economic of Islamic Banking Growth and published in the International Journal of Finance and Economics. He is the editor-in-chief of American Journal of Islam and Society and of the Review of Islamic Economics, and is the honorary treasurer of the International Association of Islamic Economics. Professor Mehmet, thank you for joining us, and I will be happy if you can share the ideas during the 20 minutes, and then we can have the question and answers another 10 minutes. Time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's good to be here with friends. Indonesia is one of my favorite country. Not only it's a great country, it's a beautiful country with amazing food, of course. But I had the blessing of working with quite a number of Indonesian friends and students. And therefore we have developed this close connection, including Dr. Hilmun Issar, for instance. And thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be part of this program. And I'm happy that reflective programs and conferences have been developed to look at the issues, in particular post-pandemic era. It is indeed exciting because we want to see certain changes, not only in the global economy and the economies in the OIC countries, including Indonesia, but at the same time, the nature of this change. What is the nature of this change? Because everyone is talking about building back better, but that building back better has a lot of connotations, a lot of normative implications, because it suggests that what we had until COVID was not necessarily good, and therefore we want to make it better. But the question is, if you stay within the same paradigm, whether you will be able to make it better. And that's a huge question that we have to ask in the light of course, one of the titles in this conference, Islamic Economic System. So that directly refers to a system-related search. So it is not only institutional changes or having Islamic banking and finance within the existing structure, but developing a system understanding so that the post-COVID solutions can represent a paradigmatic change to overcome the problems that we have witnessed in the pre-COVID and during COVID. Just to give you some reflections, for instance, when we look at, of course, COVID created huge challenges for us. And as part of those challenges, we have expected some positive responses and quick responses. But we have ended up nearly, it took around 9 months to find the vaccination. And still it is nearly 2 years, nearly more than 1.5 years. The large part of the world still has not received the vaccination. So the simple question here that we want to ask, therefore, the large economies of the world, when it comes to producing guns and ammunitions to kill millions of people in a second, and they can allocate very large amounts of money for so-called defense industry, but what I call the war industry, yet they have failed to provide such amount of funding available for the health sector. So the asymmetry, why governments exist, why economies exist, why the social structures exist is to ensure well-being of all stakeholders and importantly, the human well-being. But as we have seen, when it comes to war economies, very large amounts of money can be easily available, yet when it comes to health, such as putting all the monies together to find a vaccination very quickly, it didn't work. No one put that necessary funding available for that, for research and development. And also, of course, what we have currently, the inequality we always had, and now we have inequality in access to vaccination as well. And therefore, Dr. Isarwar was referring to zakat, for instance, using zakat to make a vaccination available for those who cannot afford. Now, that's a noble, of course, noble solution, utilizing the resources of the OIC Muslim society. But the question remains, what happened to those funds, the budgets of the governments? Why they have failed to provide the necessary means to respond to COVID, including vaccination. So these are important existential questions for us to consider. And in particular, of course, Islamic finance, Islamic banking. So at the end of the day, it seems that we managed to find again solution in the traditional Islamic sources and institutions such as zakat and waqf. Yet our modern institutions such as Islamic banks have not necessarily drawn a distinction in responding to COVID. And that, of course, brings us the whole system, the question of system and what's the nature of the system should be so that we can have certain outcomes. And therefore, in my title, there are 3 important things, which, of course, just, sustainable, and imperative. And these are important for us to consider any post-COVID solution in terms of making a difference. So moral economy by definition, and Islamic moral economy specifically refers substantive morality being an essential part of decision-making process. In other words, rather than responding to the market conditions and how markets shapes you, you shape markets. So that distinction. So rather than Islam being instrumentalized to produce the results that the market wants to see or the market logic wants to see, you utilize Islam to shape the process entirely. So that distinction, causality, and the way causality runs currently, we have market running the show and Islam being an input in that. It is just instrumentalized. However, the whole objective in moral economies, including Islamic moral economy, the economy, society, everything has to be embedded into the value system, in our case, Islamic value system, so that we can produce certain outcomes, that those outcomes are just, those outcomes are sustainable, and it is imperative for us to be part of a continuous change. The imperativeness is very much important to Islam. Now, of course, just has to be an essential part of any paradigmatic change for us. The concept of adala, the justice, and ihsan has been running together as the important, they are the essential qualities that we want to see as an outcome of any economic restructuring or any economic system. So when we look at, for instance, the definition of Islamic economics put forward since 1970s, what you see either prevention of injustice or formulating justice. So that's a definition. The definition of Islamic economics is not resource allocation, is not efficiency. So there is a paradigmatic difference here. What is that paradigmatic difference? Because ontologically, you are saying that you perceive human in a different way, you perceive the world in a different way because of your ontological base, and therefore, Maqasid al-Sharia tells you that whatever you do, whatever economic activity in our case, that has to be linked certain substantive moralities. And that substantive morality essentializes the interests of humans and other stakeholders have to be considered, the well-being of humans and other stakeholders, including environment, for instance. So that justice has to be an essential quality around which we have to work. And when justice doesn't solve the problem, therefore ihsan comes. Ihsan is equilibrating, establishing equilibrium between different states. In other words, when the initial solution, despite even to existence of adala, doesn't solve the problem, then those who are better off, they have to help the others to get the similar levels so that the equilibrium in the society, the balance in the society, the balance in the entire world can be continued, not only between humans, but humans' relationship to others, including environment. So therefore, adala and ihsan has to be two important qualities of any change, which has been the promise of Islamic economics movement. But unfortunately, Islamic finance has not taken that up because it has found itself a refuge in the market system that we have. So therefore, the Islamic economic system, the ecosystem that everyone refers, unfortunately, there is no ecosystem. You have institutions, you have halal markets, you have Islamic banking and finance, and you have Waqf and Zakat, of course, but they are not connected to each other, and they are not an ecosystem. In other words, they are not running according to their own premises, but they are rather responding in a reactive way to the market system. And therefore, the second and most important quality that we are looking here is the sustainability. And here I'm not referring sustainability because it has become fashion or because you have the sustainable development goals. That's another topic that we can discuss, but sustainability of human societies. And that is very much the aim of Islamic economics. And therefore, the whole Maqasid al-Sharia understanding considers well-being of not only human beings, but well-being of all the stakeholders, such as environment as well. And why? Because in our understanding in the political economy of Islam, Islamic political economy, the world is created within a mizan, balance, and that balance has to be sustained. So within that perfection, there is a balance, and that balance has to be sustained in order for the world continue to be a place for happiness. And therefore, again, when there's an imbalance, when there's a disruption, And that disruption has to be prevented. And what is that? The Islah process, the reclamation or mineralization or the reform. So Islah is a process to overcome any disruption from that equilibrium, from that balance, from that mizan. And therefore, Islamic political economy or Islamic world economy considers Islah, the reform, an imperative. It's a continuous process, how we can always bring it back or consider this balance, the mizan, as the essential quality, therefore how Ihsan can work within that framework to essentialize the sustainability. And within that sustainability, everything is connected, everyone is connected, and everything is connected. Why? Because of Tawheed. And Tawheed suggests that unitarity and complementarity has to be established. What is complementarity? Everything linked to each other. Everyone is linked to each other. As we have seen, COVID, one of the important consequences of COVID tells us that, and it gives us an important Islamic economic principle, essentializes an important Islamic economic principle. What is that? You have to consider the falah of others, the salvation of others. In other words, if we want to prevent COVID, you have to make sure that the other people are healthy as well. So if you want to keep healthy, the other people have to be healthy as well. So the connectivity is so obvious in the case of COVID, because you cannot just seclude yourself to be healthy. So if you want to live in the society, the other people have to be healthy. And that directly shows us that connectivity that Islamic economics has been referring to within this Tawhidi understanding, complementing. We complement each other, we complement the environment, environment complement us, and therefore we have to consider this complementarity in order to reach the unitary Tawhid that Allah suggests. And therefore, these are important qualities for us to consider for the post-COVID recovery. Otherwise, business as usual will not work, because the inequalities anyway existed. With COVID has become even more dire. And therefore, the imperative is to make the conditions better. The paradigm change is an imperative. And the essential quality of this imperative, essential objective of this imperative, to make the world more just, more sustainable, and therefore continue, we as individual become an instrument of that Islah process, the reform process that continues, because the becoming process, we do not complete until and whenever it goes on. So in other words, Islam suggests a continuous dynamic process. It never ends to reach a point that we can consider perfection. Perfection is always out there somewhere. Allah created the world as perfect and has given everyone and everything through the fitrah to develop towards that perfection. And therefore, our objective, whether as individuals, society, environment, natural environment, and etc., to essentialize that perfection, the development towards perfection as an important imperative for us. So the imperative that we have in front of us in this building back better it doesn't help us. And therefore, the imperative is looking into how we can work towards a paradigm change is an important quality for us to consider. And that is very much the reflections that I want to share with you to understand what is going on around us and how an Islamic response can be developed to respond to that. Some critical reflections, rather than just telling you that Islamic finance is solution. No, Islamic finance is not solution, as we have seen in COVID as well. We have just completed a research looking into how Islamic finance performed, for instance, in supporting SMEs, MSMEs during COVID. No, there is no distinction. Again, it seems that the distinction came from Waqf and Zakat and charities. And therefore, we have to look into how we can remodel the entire narrative so that we can produce the outcomes that we have been looking into. So therefore, when we look at the existing political economies throughout the world, what we have seen at macro level, of course, declining economic growth, increased unemployment, increased sovereign debt, and increased economic role of the state. And at micro level, as individual level, what we have seen, wage stagnation, precarious work has become common because they don't want you to be on the contractual work so that you should not get the rights, the rising inequality, and increasing personal debt. So one way or another, the debt is continuously becoming the essential factor, which unfortunately are going to chain all of us, is already chaining, but is continuing to chain all of us. So therefore, how we can get out of that? Can Islamic finance help us to get out of this debt-based understanding, which chain us, which dominates us? No. When we look at Islamic banking and finance, it operates in the same way, creating what we call the indebted man and woman. And that indebted man and woman is something that Islam aims to overcome. Remember the prayer of Prophet ﷺ asking refuge from debtness. So therefore, we have one way or another submitted ourselves to market logic, and the outcomes, unfortunately, is not helping. And when we look at, of course, in the post-1980s period, the economic liberalization, financial liberalization, what we ended up with entirely financialization, financialized world. Finance determines everything, the dominance of capital, what we call is financial capitalism or finance capitalism. So that has created a rentier economy. That rentierism is very much the domination over over financial resources, assets, and concentrate those assets concentrated in the hand of few, and therefore you have a very large emerging wealthy class, as opposed to very large, unfortunately, people that have been excluded from this from such process, and then increasing inequality, and also, of course, climate and environmental challenges that we have seen. The nature is suffering and is responding. The fires, the floods, and etc. is a continuous reality. The climate change is there and is unfortunately taking toll on human lives. So this financialization, that is something we have to be avoiding, because that's the Islamic solution. Islamic solution suggests that you need to have an embedded economy within the Islamic normative principles, rather than, of course, the market logic. And the Islamic embeddedness, or the embeddedness within Islam, suggests that you're talking about a society in which sharing and participation is essential, rather than the rentier economy in which a small number of people have the domination over the resources. However, resources are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everyone to have access. And when we look at, for instance, the statistics, as you can see, the financialization and the existence of this fallacy and the fictitiousness through financial system is huge. When you compare the financial assets of the world with the world GDP, unfortunately, the world GDP is only 8.3% of the total financial assets. And that's the reality that you're, in other words, a total lie, a fictitious, and nothing real in the existing. But the whole objective of Islamic moral economy, Islamic finance, should be a real economy. When we look at the figures, of course, with Islamic finance, we see similar trends, which is not embedded. And therefore, the problem that we have in front of us is, as you can see here, the domination. So the accessibility is prevented, as you can see on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, there is domination and the others are suffering. And therefore, the whole idea, how we can establish this mizan, this balance in the world, by providing those people who do not have access how we can bring to the similar level and establish equilibrium to ihsan in the process. And that's very much the objective that we have here. Again, on the right-hand side, as you can see, even the problem is not only on the surface, majority of us, because of the debt, we are below the surface, and despite the dominance. And therefore, how justice can be established in the middle, as you can see, through ihsan, so that the accessibility can be achieved. Because if you are to even, in order to have a reform, as you can see on the left-hand side, if you establish an equality, equality doesn't solve the problem, because some of us is really have accessibility problem. Therefore, the solution is the middle one, at least within the existing system. But even that is not enough for us, because that requires distribution and redistribution. In other words, zakat and waqf. But the problem is, what is the initial equation? What is the Islamic initial equation before the zakat and waqf coming and solving the problem? In other words, justice has to be established and ihsan has to be there in the initial equation, so that when the surplus is distributed, everyone has certain accessibilities. Why? Because the resources are created by Allah, and therefore those barriers that you have should not be there. And that's the initial equation. In other words, we are working through zakat and waqf to solve the problems of the existing. However, we are not questioning the initial equation. Why initial equation creates such problems? And therefore, we have to go back and look at the reality and try to solve a problem. The same thing with environmental problem. Despite the COVID condition, a research looking into climate issues. This is a study by UNDP. They found that 64% of the people around the world declare that climate change is an emergency. And this is a recent publication and out of their research. Hence, the importance of climate, because it's affecting our life. It's affecting our everyday life, our economic life, our social life, and therefore it's difficult. And on the other hand, of course, the growth, the linear growth objective, we have been told that growth is an objective, and that's the important thing. And we have to be working towards that objective of growth. But of course, what's the objective? When we look at growth so far, which has been essentialized in the last 50, 60 years in particular, it has not delivered. And on the contrary, it produced all those inequalities, including environmental problems, but human life has become terribly insecure. And therefore, we have to understand what consequences are we producing. Therefore, when you look at, again, the social media photography, the solution, not only in the middle that we distribute to overcome the problem, but we make resources available for others, as you can see on the right-hand side, because the resources are created for everyone to have accessibility. And accessibility in the first equation has to be there. When, however, that doesn't work only as in the middle, you have zakat and waqf type of instruments working to correct the mechanism. But the first solution, the initial equation, should provide equal access to resources. And that's very much the problem that we are having. And therefore, when we look at zakat, zakat is not a charitable giving, but it is because of the privatization of resources in the hand of few who earns therefore higher income. They have to compensate others who have been excluded from those resources because of the privatization of those resources. And therefore, it's not charity, it is the compensation. It is the giving the right of society to society. And therefore, that relationship has to be understood in order to understand the initial equation. So initial equation is to give access. Even to be more fairer, as you can see, those barriers has to be overcome totally. And that is very much the justice that we are talking in the in relation to political economies that we have. Now, in terms of looking, of course, Islamic finance emerged as a solution as well. But when we look at, unfortunately, the logic, again, the market logic is very much prevailing in the Islamic financing. when we look at the financing given by Islamic banks globally, we see that they are rather than allocating their resources to real economy, financial sector or the financial sphere getting more financing from Islamic banks than the productive spheres. In the same way, when we look at, for instance, the sectoral financing from Islamic finance, we see very much the consumer durables, the financial sector, and the real estate sector. However, the value-adding sectors are receiving much lesser financing from Islamic banking and finance. And therefore, these are important concerns for us to look into in order to consider what difference that we are going to have. Again, when we look at Islamic finance, for instance, in terms of financing nature, we see financialization-oriented murabaha very much prevailing. Ijara again is, but when it comes to asset-based related equity solutions such as mudaraba and musharaka, there is hardly anything there. The same thing in the COVID, what we have seen, Qard al-Hassan and Islamic banks hardly have any Qard al-Hassan financing again. And therefore, we need to have a particularly systemic oriented understanding. And therefore, looking at, for instance, how tawarruk, organized tawarruk has become very much dominant in Islamic finance. Looking at the Malaysian data, we see that Islamic finance is becoming heavily dominated by organized tawarruk. Of course, Indonesia hasn't taken up organized tawarruk and hope they wouldn't. But considering that, again, the distinction, while Islamic Fiqh Academy declared that organized tawarruk is haram, and that represents the, let's say that the will of Islam, but the market system pushes Islamic banks to adopt tawarruk, organized tawarruk, and therefore all the Sharia scholars in the Islamic banking supervisory boards, Sharia supervisory board, they have approved giving organized tawarruk. So on the one hand, the totality of Islamic Fiqh Academy representing the Islamic position, and then the market position forces Islamic banks to use organized tawarruk. As you can see how the market forces, the hegemonic nature of dominance, the capital dominance, the market logic shapes us, despite the fact that we have a fatwa from Islamic Fiqh Academy that organized tawarruk is haram. So you see how when it comes to the market logic, even we can give up the important conclusions derived by Islamic Fiqh Academy. And therefore, when we look at Islamic finance in terms of making the distinction, unfortunately, it remains a utopia, very much utopia, that I don't have anything against utopia. I love utopias and we have to work towards utopias, but unfortunately, Islamic finance, and when we look at in relation to utopia, the Islamic economics position, unfortunately, is not producing what is accepted, what is expected. So what we see very much the debt, accumulation of debt through Islamic finance, the sharing economy is not happening. Fictitious commodities are slowly coming and commodification is taking place. And therefore, what is this Islamic finance is becoming more question, as we can see in the case of COVID as well. Islamic banks and financial institutions, they have not come with any particular solution. And therefore, the systemic response is essential in order to be able to get a certain outcome, certain solutions from Islamic banking and finance. And this quotation, as you can see here, is one position that suggests that, look, if you are expecting solutions, you cannot just expect institutions that you create and produce the outcomes in relation to your Islamic political economy, Islamic economics. Because institutions have to be part and parcel of a general plan. Okay, the Islamic system has to be part of that Islamic system. So therefore, while your entire economy is working according to market logic, we cannot expect Islamic banks within that larger political economy to work towards Islamic objectives. It just doesn't work. And therefore, we must understand the Islamic banks and financial institutions, they have to be part and parcel of general system of Islam, which organizes different aspects of life. In other words, the totality, the connectivity, as we mentioned, complementarity towards unitarity. So that has to be established. The ecosystem, when we refer to Islamic finance ecosystem, it is not that we have a proper regulations and except, but those regulations are based on market economy, and we are forcing Islamic finance to produce outcomes that are expected from market economy.
Yeah,
and therefore,
Dr. Asutai, allow me to remind you, 5 minutes left.
Okay, thank you.
Much.
Thank you. And therefore, we have to look into how the logic, this logic that we have in front of us, that we can respond and we can make a difference, and we can overcome this financialized capitalism becoming more dominant in front of us. Therefore, how we can bring Islamic finance from this inactivity or being just a reactive, but become a proactive to change the equation, to contribute to the changing of the initial equation that we have, such as rather than having a share-based, shareholder-based Islamic finance, how we can move on to stakeholding. And therefore, what we have in front of us, as Eliot was in one of his poems mentioned, Islamic finance currently is a shape without form, is a paralyzed force, but we have to bring that into an activity, so develop Islamic banking and finance to respond within. And therefore, the orthodoxy that we have around us failed. The orthodoxy that we have in the political economies all over the world, and that orthodoxy has failed entirely, and it hasn't produced the outcomes, even could not mobilize the resources, for instance, quickly to produce vaccination. And the vaccination distribution, now we have inequality. And growth obsession has not produced in terms of overcoming inequality. And therefore, as an Islamic economic system, so what we are looking into now, post-growth paradigm. In the post-growth paradigm, therefore, the importance of overcoming inequalities, including environmental challenges and environmental sustainability, how that can be ensured. But the growth implies that rather than working towards every year an annual growth, we have to consider the growth is an essential new paradigm in which we start to stop. We start to develop this paradigm to stop exploiting exploiting nature, exploiting resources to a level to create further unsustainability in the process. And therefore, the growth has to be one way or another in an embedded manner, to produce a new paradigm, reducing inequalities, improving individual well-being, ensuring resilient economies, and importantly, as part of this initial equation, how universal income can be developed as Islam suggests, as well as part of this initial equation, how therefore the distribution of the resources can enable people to have a dignified life, the universal income. So the initial equation has to change so that, as Islam suggests, every stakeholder is recognized in the initial equation so that everyone gets their right. The justice is established, ihsan is there, and therefore sustainability of societies can be achieved. And therefore, when we look at the orthodoxies, as we mentioned, have failed. And therefore, the pandemic world will ask new questions. And therefore, we need to have new answers. And that new answer is very much what we are claiming Islamic economics have that answer. But of course, we have to recognize that we cannot leave the Islamic economics and the operation of Islamic finance to the mercy of market logic. And therefore, we have to come up with a continuously developing, continuously changing, continuously reform process to say something new. Time is an issue, therefore I'll finish quickly. And therefore, in this one, the Iqtisad world, the world, of course, Iqtisad, the Arabic world for economics, but there are paradigmatic differences. Because in the current system, it's based on rights. So it is your right, therefore, to exploit individuals, to exploit environment, and etc. Because you have to maximize, you have to reach efficiency. However, Islamic ontology suggests that it is privilege. Everything that we have around us is a privilege. So your paradigm is based on privilege understanding. Therefore, everything that we have around us is an amana, is a trust, and therefore whether other individuals, whether society, whether environment, and everything that we have. So within this paradigm, therefore, as we mentioned, if I want to keep healthy, I have to make sure that I'm contributing to the health of other individuals as well in the process. And therefore, this particular paradigm has to change to produce a particular result for us, so that we can look into how a particular understanding towards moral economy can be developed. In other words, how the emancipation and empowerment that we are referring in Islamic economics as an objective function can be achieved. We have to overcome the adverse circumstances has been imposed by market system producing continuously, such as financial crisis, the health crisis, the environmental crisis, and etc. But at the same time, we have to go beyond this linear development understanding into circularity within the Iqtisad understanding of what we have around us. And therefore, we have to disrupt the initial equation that has been imposed on us by the market system, by the existing political economy. It does not allow us to respond and establish this equality, how people can reach the resources without these barriers. And therefore, we have to look into how the well-being of all the stakeholders can be considered in the process with an extensive and integrated development agenda. And therefore, Islamic moral economy here lies as an important counter-hegemony to create something different, a system response, as the title of this conference refers to. I'm not sure whether it was a particular selection or just happened to be put into the title, but that's an important message, that systemic response. And therefore, how a stakeholder governance, again in the title, a stakeholder governance-based model can be developed as Islamic moral economy suggests to produce a solution for the post-COVID era. In other words, how we can rescue human, land, environment, labor, even capital from this domination, so that we can establish this Mizan world. The balance world is an important task in front of us. Consider the post-COVID era. And therefore, the world of Iqtisad, referring to justice, the cost and the cost implications that we get from the word Iqtisad is important for us to understand. Within this cost understanding, the just share and hence the justice is essential quality, but at the same time, giving the right of everything to everyone, to locate everything in its place. And establishing justice is an important quality for us to achieve, so that the ihsan, the beneficence, the equilibrium, establishing equilibrium in the society in order to continue with the balance can be possible for us to consider. And therefore, just to finish, just one slide and then finish. It's a long presentation, but I will just share this one and finish with that. Is therefore the moral economy. The moral economy suggests that particularly Islamic moral economy refers to embeddedness. In other words, rather than we submit to the market logic, we shape the nature of whatever we have around us. And therefore, the important qualities that we would see to establish, in other words, the embeddedness is particularly essentializing justice with the inherent value, understanding that Allah created everything to be appreciated and to be respected. Therefore, the inherent value is important. Importance of real economy, the reciprocity, the fictitiousness, with all this, looking into the commodification, aiming at justice with the particular consideration of for the initial equation, so that we can reach the inherent value in the process and consider the inherent values, and hence distribution can be a corrective mechanism. But what is important in the initial equation that we consider the inherent values, and inherent values therefore requires the distribution of the surplus in a potentially just manner, so that we can establish a particular outcome which is acceptable by all the stakeholders in the process. And therefore, if we are talking about post-COVID corrective mechanism, we have to consider the initial equation, and responding to initial equation is an important issue for us. As you can see here, the Islamic initial equation is larger. It involves a lot of stakeholders. It recognizes each stakeholders through their inherent values to go to the equation, and also it has it recognizes that if the return for each stakeholder is not enough, as you can see in front of each stakeholder, you have coefficients implying that inherent value has to be recognized, so that people has to be given additional in terms of universal value to solve the problem. And therefore, I just finished there. There are plenty of discussion, but we have to bring new answers rather than working within the logic of existing market economy. We have to develop a particular understanding within our own political economy, so that we can move Islamic finance and Islamic economy to produce outcomes that are acceptable, to make a difference in individual lives of the other stakeholders, including environment. And therefore, let's put our efforts together to work together to develop a response, a paradigmatic response to the issues, rather than building back better, because that building back better, again, based on the orthodoxy. However, orthodoxy is not working. Islamic solution in terms of what we have, Islamic finance as an orthodoxy, that hasn't worked either. So let's put our efforts together for a better solution, so that the post-COVID era should not be the replication of the existence, but we can say something new, something unfrozen, so that we can have better future. And therefore, how Rumi says, how pleasant is the flow without blurring and freezing. Now it is necessary to say something new. And in particular, you, the new generation, I hope that will come up with that something new. Thank you very much and much appreciated. And thank you for having me. I hope it was useful. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very interesting insight from Professor Asutais. Listen together, and I think I can provide one opportunity for questions for Professor Asutai, but I do apologize because I cannot facilitate for another two because the third speaker already joined us. So, question from Sakwila Dania. I'm sorry, Rahmini Indah Lestari. To Professor Mahmed Ashutai, how does the professor respond when someone tells you that the Islamic financial system is trying to find a legitimate way to overcome the existing conventional system and is trying to find a fatwa, even though there are still many products in the capital market that do not have a Sharia fatwa, especially for derivative products? Due to time limitation, can you answer less than 2 minutes, Professor? Thank you very much.
Okay, I think the problem in that question, of course, Islamic financial system, as we define system is something is different and beyond what we have. System requires a particular operational mechanism within the Islamic logic. However, Islamic finance is only operating within the logic of the market system. And therefore, it has to fit into, I mean, we all talk about, for instance, certain regulations, certain rules, including IFE and IFSP, but also Basel. Okay, these are jurisdictions, imposed jurisdictions, how banking and finance should be. And despite the distinctions and differences in Islamic banking and finance, we have to subject them to the same regulations, same risk mechanisms. So what happens then? Of course, Islamic finance cannot essentialize those qualities in the operation. It fails. So the outcome is, how you can express Islamic finance within the existing structures, within the existing market logic. And then when it comes to that, so rather than you shape the logic, you accept the logic of the others, you fit into it. And when you try to fit into it, you have to remove the excesses. So you have to give up the musharaka, you have to give up the mudaraba in the process, for instance, and you have to accept organized tawarruk so that you can create liquidity. In other words, you are trying to fit into the existing market logic, and you are trying to become hybrid products of the existing. And therefore, our objective should be developing necessary structures as well as the regulations, because IOF and IFSP, at the end of the day, they are as well responding to the market conditions in producing their standards, not necessarily Islamic logic. The only difference is the Sharia compliancy of the existing. And therefore, the system understanding goes beyond that, that we have to create a particular systemic response which directly reflects your principles and the consequences that you want to have. And therefore, for instance, the question of whether there's an Islamic market. Of course, there's an Islamic market, but the distinction is not the market. The distinction is market system and market as a mechanism in Islam. So it is an instrument in Islam. It's not a self-regulating, imposing market system. That's distinction. So market system, of course, does not run according to Islamic principles. And there, however, Islam has market mechanism. So those distinctions that we have to understand and make a difference, and therefore, how Islamic finance in the process has become hybrid instruments and institutions of the market logic. And therefore, we have to now, with all this intellectual acumen is developing, we have to bring our minds together and efforts together to create an Islamic economic system within you have Islamic financial system. In other words, this integrity of political economy has to be, otherwise your political economy is based on market system, and then you have institutions trying to work within that system. And unfortunately, therefore, the consequences that we produce does not. And let's hope that in the post-COVID era, we can be a solution, we can produce alternative solutions, and rather than squeezing ourselves to Waqf and Zakat, which are amazingly important institutions, but we have to look into how resource accessibility can be responded and more equitable and just world can be established. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Asutai. Highly appreciated for Professor Asutai to give us the fruitful discussion this afternoon. And thank you very much, Professor Asutai, for your times. And now we welcome to Professor, the third speaker, Professor Dr. Salina Kasim from IIUM, Institute of Islamic Banking, Finance, International Islamic University of Malaysia. I would like to read the CV from Professor Dr. Salina Kasim. Professor Dr. Salina Kasim currently is a professor at IIUM Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, International Islamic University, Malaysia, and currently a professor at the IIUM Institute of Banking Finance, IIBF, International Islamic University, Malaysia. Dr. Salina Kasim graduated and awarded her PhD in monetary economics in 2006 from the IIUM, master and bachelor degree from USA in 1992 and 1994. Professor Salina Kasim awarded several grants, fundings, and sponsorship from reputable funders locally and internationally, and published several books in the areas of Islamic finance. And her book entitled Islamic Financial System Theory and Practice won the prestigious Anugerah Buku Negara National Book Award. Without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Salina Kasim to share the discussion about the role of Islamic social finance in expediting economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. Times is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I hope, Madam, the organizer can share my screen. I mean,
All right, Prof.
because I think I have difficulties to share. Oh, okay. So
I'm sorry. Just want to remind you, we have 20 minutes presentation and 10 minutes for question and answer. Thank you very much.
okay, thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Respected Prof. Yuliandri, Rector of Universitas Andalas, Dr. Eva Yunedi, the Dean of the Faculty, the Chairman of this conference, Dr. Muhammad Fani Al-Farisi, respected fellow speakers, Prof. Mahmad Asute and Dr. Hilmun, lecturers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizer of this conference for inviting me to speak regarding the role of Islamic social finance, in expediting the economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. I truly believe that there are a lot of ways that Islamic finance generally and Islamic social finance specifically could play the role by offering various innovative solutions to expedite recovery, economic recovery, as well as resilience of the economy. Okay, so next slide, please. So next slide, please. All right. So as you can see here, that people talk about the damage being done in the economy due to the pandemic. I just checked this morning that there are a lot of damages in all aspects of life, I would say, being exerted by the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been, since last year, we thought that it's going to be short-lived, but then until today, cases are on the rise, and countries throughout the globe are facing health crisis. So what damage has been done due to the pandemic? First of all, obviously the health crisis with more than 270 million cases and 4.51 million as at this morning, and cases are rising. And definitely the impact on the pandemic has been, many economies have been hard hit, with more than 120 million being pushed to extreme poverty. Okay, in Malaysia itself, the poverty rate increased from around 3% to a whopping 8.3% in 2020. There are also rising unemployment as well as underemployment of resources. Children are being deprived from education, especially from the poor families due to inadequate social protection, widening income inequality, where both extreme poverty and billionaire are, the gap are increasing. Okay, between these two groups, and also we see massive global recession. So let's next slide, please. So zooming into the issue of income inequality, we see that the major, one of the major objectives of Islamic economics is to achieve economic equality. Okay, a fair distribution of income, a reduction of income gap. However, until today, the reality today and the COVID further worsen this situation, income inequality is acute, especially in the Muslim countries. So this is like such an irony. And based on recent studies, figures show that 50% of world poverty is happening in the Muslim countries, while only the Muslim forms only 24% of the world's population. So how do we address this issue? What is the problem? Next, please. So we truly believe that Islamic finance would be able to, sorry, let me just get that. We truly believe that Islamic finance should be able to provide some solution to solve this inequality issue. After all, it is indeed one of the pillars in supporting the function of Islamic economy is that access to finance or access to financial capital would be key to job creation, to income generation, and therefore reduction of inequality, which is currently happening in many of the Muslim countries. So money from the Islamic perspective is just an instrument of transfer and not an objective. Therefore, financial capital by itself is not productive unless it in the words of the scholars, they say join hands, or unless it is exchanged with other economic resources, namely land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability. Now, this combination of financial capital, money, with physical capital increases the productivity of economic resources creation, leading to the creation of employment opportunities, particularly to those who are willing to contribute their resources, be it land, labor, machinery, mental capabilities, leading to a multiplication or generation of economic activities. And that's the gist that what Islamic finance is trying to achieve, to give access, financial access to the poor, to the hardest hit segment of the society, or to the most vulnerable segment of the society, will be improved. Okay, so the key here is how to increase financial inclusion to the vulnerable segment of the society. Next, please. So we all know that in essence, Islamic finance includes justice and fairness in the distribution of wealth, okay, as well as in terms of accessibility to wealth. Okay, and according to Imam Al-Ghazali, the objective of Islamic finance or Islamic finance aim to achieve the maqasid sharia, and this is to promote the well-being of mankind along the 5 dimensions of the maqasid sharia. In the context of Islamic finance, therefore, efforts must be made to safeguard these elements to serve the public interest of the maslahah, thus are desirable. So from the Islamic finance perspective, finding ways and means of how Islamic finance can protect these 5 essential elements of the maslahah to ensure development, growth, socio-economic well-being is desirable. Okay, so next, please. Now, regarding the Islamic finance industry, we see that we hear all the reports on Islamic finance, that the Islamic finance industry is witnessing a rapid growth, total asset. These numbers are everywhere. In fact, the Standard & Poor's in its 2021 report stated that currently the asset of the Islamic finance industry has reached 2.2 trillion. It's a $1 trillion industry. It sustained a double-digit growth over the last decade, despite the challenging economic background. Therefore, the Islamic financial system has gradually becoming an important component. It's no longer peripheral, but it has become an important component of the global financial system. Okay. Now, however, we see that growth has been uneven. These are some issues. In more than the 60 countries having Islamic financial services, about 95% of the global Islamic finance assets are concentrated in just 10 countries. That is one issue. Another issue regarding the growth of Islamic finance is that despite its rapid growth, development was limited to only 3 sub-segments, particularly Islamic banking, which comprise of more than 70%. Then we have Islamic capital market as well as takaful. Now, next, please. Now, despite these impressive numbers about the growth of Islamic finance, we see that there are low financial inclusion in the Muslim countries. The delivery, so I provide for easy reference there, financial inclusion is the delivery of financial services to the unbankables at affordable costs. Okay, and we see that the average for the Muslim countries are very low. In most countries, most other countries, especially the developed countries, financial inclusion rate has been produced, as being shown by the global Findex are around 80 to 90%, but for the Muslim countries, on average, 27%. Some of the reasons being quoted is that due to absence and uneven across access to financial services, as well as unavailability of Sharia compliant products. Even when there are the availability of Islamic banking services, particularly in the MENA region, we see that the usage are very low, around 2 to 4%. And then therefore we would like to ask how or what is the role of Islamic banking in particular and Islamic finance in improving access to finance. Let's next slide, please. So who are the most affected by the pandemic? These are those who are being categorized as unbankables. So we see that there are some sort of discrimination towards access to finance. And in most cases, we see that the demographic profile of the Muslim countries fall into the unbankables, the unbanked. So access to finance to these group of people who are being affected most by the pandemic are very low. Okay, next please. And here you can see a very recent research being done by McKinsey and co. And you can see that the various sectors that are being affected by the COVID, okay, and you can see that the most affected sector, A there, the circle A towards the end, is accommodation and food services, as well as G there, which is healthcare and social assistance. It is most affected in the better manner. And then we also have C there, which is arts, entertainment, and recreation. So definitely you can see that those economies that are being affected or mainly relying on tourism, for example, services, education services in particular are being affected badly due to the crisis. We will see later on why is it that it's important for us to identify these sectors so that we can suggest some potential solutions in terms of Islamic social finance. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. So what is the role of Islamic social finance or Islamic finance in general? I truly believe, I again mentioned this, that Islamic social finance has a very big role to play. Islamic social finance is an approach to address societal issues through innovative approach beyond traditional financing. Okay, methods such as socially responsible investment, microfinance, community investments, which aim at having social and environmental impact. Okay, so in the context of Islamic social finance, therefore, we are looking at modes of finance that are rooted in Islamic ethics and intended to achieve social benefits, or we can also coin or use or call it Islamic finance for social good. Okay, these include instruments like zakat, wakaf, sadaqah, hibah, qad hasan, as well as ta'awun-based instruments or cooperative-based instruments such as takaful. Okay? Now, the challenge for the Islamic finance industry, in particular the Islamic banks, is how to develop and implement these instruments in the context and realities of a commercially driven Islamic banking industry. That remain a very important challenge. Next slide, please. Now, when we discuss the role of Islamic social finance in providing the solution, so far, the discussion has been very much conceptual and taking the theoretical approaches. Okay, and if you see the research that has been produced, mostly are descriptive in nature, descriptive about the concept, the theoretical basis, as well as some criticisms, but do not really provide practical solutions. So I would think that in moving forward, new areas would have to be explored. Exploring Islamic social finance, that effort should be there. Okay, how do we consider Islamic social finance as a solution to expedite recovery? By looking at how do we do this, we can combine Islamic social finance or the application, look at the application of Islamic social finance in specific economic sectors. For example, in the agriculture sector, in the trading sector, in the tourism sector, because the tourism sector is very much affected by the COVID, as research has shown just now. Another way to explore Islamic social finance as a solution to expedite recovery in a more practical manner is to look at how Islamic social finance can be applied in a specific economic segment. For example, for small businesses, as well as youth employment. We can also see how we can improve the delivery channels of Islamic social finance, and we can also the need to enhance the efficiency of Islamic social finance institutions. All this I provide in a detailed slide in the coming slides. Let's continue. Let's next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of Islamic social finance and specific economic usage or activities, let me go through it very quickly. For example, we can consider Islamic social finance for financing productive activities. Research are being done in the area pertaining to wakaf crowdfunding for small farmers. Very recently, we come up with wakaf crowdfunding for paddy farmers. Okay, zakat fund for financing productive economic activities. How to increase the efficiency of zakat distribution. Okay, cooperative or cooperation or collaboration between zakat institution and Islamic microfinance. So these are one of the ways. Another specific economic usage will be Islamic social finance for basic needs provision. Okay, how can zakat, hibah, the sources of funds in Islamic social finance can be channeled for consumption purpose? Can be channeled effectively, be channeled for payment of debts. We work on one research on the role of a Gharimin agency to solve indebtedness issues among the youth. Okay, for healthcare services. okay, for providing wakaf model for affordable housing. All these are actually taking place in the Islamic finance sphere. Okay. Now, another way is to look at Islamic social finance in the specific area of developing community agriculture. Okay. For example, Islamic social finance or wakaf based agriculture, community agriculture, developing the unutilized, the vast unutilized wakaf land. Okay, how can community agriculture together, agriculture based on community, some activities are being done there. Cash wakaf for microfinance, a lot of potentials to apply, to explore, to use cash wakaf for microfinance, as well as now a lot of issues about developing green finance, green microfinancing. Next slide, please. Okay. Now we can also look at Islamic social finance to economic sectors, okay, where we can look into the possibilities of wakaf crowdfunding for paddy farmers, this one I have mentioned, or maybe for traders, for fishery industry. So all this can be of good application in terms of how Islamic social finance can solve the those affected by the COVID. Another area is crowdfunding for developing community-based. Just now I mentioned this. Now we can be more specific. Economic sector, perhaps aquaculture or agriculture. Okay, a lot of studies being done, developing wakaf forests. All this would need access to finance, and Islamic social finance can actually provide the channel or the assistance or the financial access. We can also have Islamic social finance instruments, let it be wakaf, zakat, hibah, or sadaqah, for developing a rural agro-tourism. There are efforts towards developing honey bee project, okay, on cooperative base, and being financed by socially responsible investment. Okay, so these are some areas. Next, please. So I will throw in all these possibilities. Of course, the details will have to be elaborated in detail, but in the interest of time, we cannot do that. Now, we can also look at Islamic social finance by specific target group. We target youth entrepreneurs because youth, as you can see just now, are being included as one category of the unbankables. Youth unemployment is on the rise. Even those coming out from, graduated from universities, they couldn't get job. So why not we look into the possibility of channeling Islamic social finance, for youth entrepreneurs. Okay, there can also be wakaf-based socially responsible investment sukuk for affordable housing, to develop affordable housing. This can be done with collaboration of, say, supranational institution like the Icbe, or even the collaboration of wakaf institution, the state in Malaysia, the State Islamic Religious Council, with the commercial bank, which is actually happening now. Okay, so I think credit should be given in this context as to the role of the Islamic banks in participating in these activities, providing financing to build affordable housing on undeveloped or underdeveloped wakaf land. This is happening in Malaysia. The specific example is Wakaf Siti Aisyah in Pulau Pinang. Perhaps if you have the interest, you can check. Now, Islamic social finance funded productive activities on unutilized wakaf land. This I have mentioned. There are a lot of examples. SRI Sukuk for microfinance, which has not been done. This can be done with collaboration with microfinance institutions and the financial institutions. Even the commercial bank can do this. And as well as micro takaful. Micro takaful is not being there. So if we have this Islamic micro takaful for the poor, this can be a good help to assist the vulnerable segments who are being affected by the crisis, okay, or by the pandemic. Next slide, please. Another way for the Islamic social finance to provide some solutions for the pandemic is by coming up with innovative financial instrument. Okay, so this is important, and this will be the contribution of the Islamic financial institutions in providing the solutions for a speedy recovery of the economy. For example, we are looking at, we haven't looked at the financial instruments. Can you go to the financial instruments? Or okay, Islamic P2P, or wakaf crowdfunding for small farmers, a wakaf base or SRI sukuk for affordable housing. Okay, all this, yeah. Now, in terms of, I also mentioned that Islamic social finance can collaborate with the Islamic, the various types of Islamic financial institutions. For example, cooperative-based economic empowerment program, Islamic microfinance models based on cooperation, group lending, which requires non-physical collateral, which the poor do not have. Okay, so this can be the likes of Akhwat, where they do not require any type of collateral and observe a truly Islamic microfinance model. Okay, and as in replace of physical collateral, they actually adopt spiritual or religious collateral, mosque-based Islamic microfinance. Islamic commercial banks can also involve in the social sector, like I mentioned just now, wakaf, in education sector, in health sector. In Malaysia, Bank Muamalat Malaysia Berhad is having this specific program. We call it in Bahasa Malaysia, esok masih ada. Okay, in terms of wakaf. So they provide or they promote their wakaf program to their depositors. If their depositors would like to give away their deposit in wakaf, and they will use that for these three sectors, education, health, and there can also be participation, like I mentioned just now, Islamic commercial bank in affordable housing. This is the example or the case of Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad, where they provide housing for asnaf by collaborating with property developer Sandar. This is part of the value-based intermediation, where all the Islamic banks are trying, to offer to the public. Okay. Now, there can also be collaboration with Islamic fintech companies. Okay, Islamic crowd investing for sustainable agriculture, that can be one way. And very recently, we are working on one project, how the Islamic fintech company can provide a comprehensive wakaf registry. And in the end, it will provide an efficient wakaf sector in the country. Next, please.
Professor,
Okay.
sorry,
Yes.
Mind you, 2 minutes left.
Okay, so I will go fast. So as you can see that there are a lot of ways and a lot of efforts, like I mentioned just now, a lot of efforts being done by the Islamic financial institutions in providing the solution towards expediting recovery post-pandemic. Now, so I will go through fast. The second is that there is a rising importance of Islamic SRI, socially responsible investing, as well as green financing. So there are several initiatives to support not just the SDGs, but also the recovery process. In fact, in Malaysia, in 2014, the Securities Commission of Malaysia has formulated the SRI Sukuk framework, under which Malaysia issued its first green sukuk in 2017. So next slide, please. I have to go fast. I think the detail you can go through later on. So the SRI, I provide the basic definition for your easy reference. These are mainly a concept of making investment decisions, considering not only financial returns, but also social impact. And the Islamic financial industry gradually, or in fact, I would say, are moving into this. Next, please. So as you can see, SRI are already taking place throughout the globe. And it is good to know that the Islamic finance fraternity are also moving or joining the bandwagon of SRI by issuing SRI Sukuk. However, in terms for comparison purpose, you can see that in Asia, excluding Japan, the amount of SRI are still very low. And now it also, on the other side of the coin, it also shows that the offering rate or the penetration rate is expected to be higher in the future. So next slide, please. You can see very quickly, this is where I mentioned just now that there are high potentials of SRI because as you can see the slide there, I mean the graph there, we see that all green and SRI bond issuance are very high, but SRI, Sukuk and bond are still very low. So the potentials are there. So and again, the Islamic finance fraternities are going into this, and that is very good. Now, next slide, please. Very quickly, you can see that this is from the Securities Commission Malaysia 2014, the SRI Sukuk framework. So you can see that the efforts have been initiated more than nearly 6 or 7 years ago. So there are a lot of activities that are eligible, categorized as eligible SRI projects. As you can see over there, I would like to bring your attention towards the end of the slide where you can see Wakaf properties, development of Wakaf asset, any projects that undertake the development of Wakaf properties are being considered as the area of SRI Sukuk. Okay, so that is a good development in the Islamic finance industry in Malaysia, as well as hopefully throughout the globe. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I just want to show to you that efforts are ongoing. You can see that the SRI Sukuk notable projects, Indonesia is there. When Indonesia issue its sovereign green sukuk to a big amount of US dollar 1.25 billion. It is fully subscribed when it was issued, and the first green bond was issued in 2008, and then sukuk was first offered for the purpose of renewable energy, that was Orasis Sukuk in 2012. Okay, so efforts are already there. We also have vaccine sukuk, then first ringgit SRI sukuk for the education purpose for the public school. Public schools have been issued by Khazanah Malaysia, the investment arm of the Ministry of Finance Malaysia. This happened in 2015, and in 2017 we have Tadau Green Sukuk, the first green sukuk being issued in the world. Okay, so that is a good development that I want to share. Next slide, please. Now, the third role of Islamic social finance or Islamic finance in general in expediting recovery and creating more economic opportunity for the vulnerable segment of the society is to support the development of Islamic social business enterprises. And this is happening, and especially in Indonesia. Later on, I will show you the figures. By supporting, I mean that Islamic social finance can provide funding support for the SBE, social business enterprises, as well as providing a complete supply chain for the SBE. And this can be done through innovative Islamic finance, social finance instrument like cash wakaf, SRI Suku, so on and so forth. Okay, next slide, please.
Prof, the time is already over.
Okay, so this is the data for Islamic social business enterprise in Indonesia. You can see that the social enterprise prevalent rate, especially in Indonesia, is very high. So the Islamic finance, Islamic social finance can play a very important role in providing financing to these sectors. I have a lot more. Perhaps if I can just read through, the fourth role is to establish an enabling environment, okay, so that Islamic social finance can flourish. I mentioned just now about the establishing the database, refining the regulatory environment so that the Islamic social finance institution can actually provide a more comprehensive supporting role for economic activity and expedite economic activities. I thank you for your attention. Time is not on our side, but I have a lot to share. But perhaps some of the concern I can address it in the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Salina Kasim, thank you very much for providing us very insightful discussions. I think we got one question already from Amanda. As you mentioned, the Islamic social finance have an important role in support the society that impacted by the COVID-19. However, how can we boost the collections on this instrument since the willingness of society to participate on ISF is still low? Probably the first question can be answered now.
All right. Okay. I'll try to make it short and simple. Now, that is a very good question. And there seems to be an irony. Okay. And we have done a research and we have got it published. And this research is a quantitative research. We look at the intention to donate. And I have to give the credit to Dr. Laili Dwi Arsianti. This is the effort being done by her. That when we look at the intention to give donation or charity, and as you know, charity, donation, zakat, all these are Islamic social finance instruments. And we find that that during the pandemic, the intention to give away in charity, the development of wakaf sector are more encouraging during this pandemic crisis compared to the normal times. So this is not something that we make up. This is, the evidence is there. We provide statistical support on the higher intention and willingness to give away in charity during the crisis. Okay, and as you can see that not all of the economic units are being affected by the pandemic crisis, only the vulnerable segment. And those who are still earning, like government servants and those who are in the business, which are highly demanded during the pandemic crisis, with their higher income, they are willing to give out more in charity. Okay, so that's I think is worth taking and should provide more reason that Islamic social finance can provide various solutions during this pandemic crisis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, professors. So everyone, distinguished speaker, distinguished participant, distinguished presenters, Professor Salina Kasim already closed and finalized as the last presenter, as the last keynote speakers in these sessions. And we would like to give a high appreciation to Professor Salina Kasim for giving us the very good insight about the role of Islamic social finance in expediting economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sari Lenggogeni. I would like to thank you very much to give me a chance for facilitating the discussions and session for this three distinguished keynote speakers. I would like to give it back to the Indah as a moderator. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Dr. Sari Lenggogeni, who has been moderator today, then leading the keynote speech session. Thank you, Dr. Sari Lenggogeni. For all keynote speakers, we would like to invite you to kindly remain on the Zoom meeting room. We are moving now to the next agenda, is presenting token of appreciation. To present the token of appreciation to Professor Mehmet Sutai from Durham University, we would like to invite Vice Dean of Faculty of Economics Universitas Andalas, Bapak Enrizal Ridwan. I think it's him, right? Please prepare the token of appreciation to the host. So we invite Bapak Enrizal Ridwan as a Vice Dean of Faculty of Economics to present the token of appreciation to Professor Mehmet Sutai. Please, Bapak Enrizal Ridwan. No, it's actually for Professor Salina Kasim. The other one is to Professor Mehmet. So sorry for waiting, Prof. Mehmet. For host, please make Pak Enrizal Ridwan as a co-host, please, because I think he cannot speak or animate by himself. So sorry. Pak Enrizal.
Oh, okay, Indah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
It's been mute for a while.
I'm so sorry. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so Pak Enrizal, we are inviting you to give the token of appreciation to Professor Mahmed As-Sutai from Durham University. Time is yours, Bapak.
Okay. Thank you, Indah. Professor Mahmed As-Sutai, you gave very nice presentation about the Islamic economic system. So I enjoy your presentation a lot. I think so do everyone here. So actually, I wonder whether justice as an objective of the system or as an outcome of the system or both of them. So, but anyway, that's very interesting, and I much appreciate your contribution to this international conference, on behalf of Andalas University as a whole, and also as well as thanks to Durham University, or I don't know how to pronounce, like Durham University or Durham University or Durham University, we say here in Indonesia.
Durham.
Anyway, I hope some of our colleagues would join Durham University, maybe as a PhD student in Islamic economics or as a visiting researchers. So I look forward to your collaboration in the future. And let me express our thanks by offering you this token, okay, as a appreciation for you from Universitas Andalas, okay. So it's like a token offering. That's your Professor As-Sutai. Yeah.
Prof, you're still on mute. You're still in mute.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed, and it's good to see some colleagues, including Professor Kasim. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for keeping up the momentum for intellectual change and challenges. That's very important for the new generation so that we can bring about a change, inshallah. And we are happy to collaborate in the future as well with colleagues from your university, as well as potential students, inshallah. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mehmet.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ahmed. So please, if you don't mind, stay until at the end for the photo session with the.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, but I have to thank you as well, Indah Suryani. I have given you enough headache. Thank you very much for the patience. Thank you.
No worries, Prof. So hope we'll see you one day. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, now we move to the next one. The token of appreciation will be delivered to Prof. Salina Kasim. We invite Bapak Muhammad Fani as the chairman of the 5th International Conference on Business and Economic. Pak Muhammad Fani, time is yours. Can you unmute by yourself, Pak Fani?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, on behalf of the committee, I would like to say that we are happy to have Prof. Salina. Actually, Prof. Salina is my guru in IUM. And also, when I was a student there, helped her in research and also consultation. So personally, I learned a lot from her, and also now the topic of Islamic finance is more on how the Islamic finance not only as an alternative but also the solution. Yeah, if we look at the current pandemic. So I'm very happy that Prof. Salina can contribute to this conference, and also since the IC field, we have this collaboration, and we hope that we can have more collaboration between the two institutions in the future. Okay, and on behalf of the committee, I would like to give this this humble certificate of appreciation to Prof. Salina, and maybe next time don't mind if we invite you again. Okay, thank you, Prof. Please.
Thank you very much, Prof. Pani. And Prof. Selina, thank you very much, Prof. And can you put in on-mute position? Can you do pass up?
Oh, can you hear me now? I was
Oh yeah,
saying
yes, clearly, yeah.
yeah. Again, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me. I'm very happy to also meet fellow speakers, Prof. Mehmet in particular. I've learned a lot and take a lot of the criticisms from the works of Prof. Mehmet Asute. And I think these are all very healthy discussion for us to further refine and further polish up what the Islamic finance can do and should do in order to be the main instrument, financial instrument to help create more economic activity, real economic activity, as well as to provide the solutions to the current economic issues. So I also acknowledge the collaboration that we have with Universitas Andalas. We hope for more activities and fruitful collaboration in the future. That would also mean perhaps more webinars, public lectures, which we are very happy to participate as part of our contribution, the IIUM contribution to the Islamic finance sector, industry. Thank you very much again. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof. Selina. And yeah, I do remember guest lectures also will be possible for Prof. Mehmet and Prof. Selina in the future. All right. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we are now arrived in the last session of the day, is photo session. So to all distinguished speaker, distinguished guest, distinguished lecturer, and all participants, please turn on your video and make yourself comfortable in front of your camera. Okay, so for the committee, we'll try and help to capture. Okay, we start from the first page. So please help another team. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the next one is 1, 2, 3. Yeah, has been shown on the screen, so your face is on the screen also. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so there are some slides not shown up the video yet in the last pages. Okay. All right, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I think it's... Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our agenda today. We would like to say thank you very much for all of the distinguished guests, distinguished speakers, distinguished lecturers, and all participants. Thank you for Askrida Syariah and Bank Syariah Indonesia for supporting this event. And also thank you very much for all keynote speakers, Pak Hilmun Izhar, Professor Mehmet Asutai. Thank you so much, Prof. Hope to see you in the future one day. Thank you, Prof. Selina Kasim. So I hope the collaboration will be around until this. And we are highly appreciated for your attendance and participation during the first day session of the 5th International Conference on Business and Economics. Thank you very much. And I also would like to remind the participants, because this is the first day, and the second day will be start by registration at 8:30 a.m. and followed by the keynote speech number 1. It's Muhammad Fani Al-Farisi, where we talk about how Indonesian Islamic banks survived the COVID-19 pandemic. And the next speakers will be Dr. Sutar Emir Hidayat from the Committee Nasional Ekonomi and Keuangan Syariah. Don't miss it. And after that, we follow by parallel session. All right. First, thank you very much for all the participants. I'm Indah Permata Suryani. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much. Selena.